Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Irreverent Warriors Grunt Style Foundation podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this Good Friday. Thank you so much for everybody and the well wishes and all the great feedback we've heard about all of our events that happened last weekend. We know everybody had a wonderful time at the hikes around the country. I am excited today. I am joined by our friend, a good friend of the Grunt Style Foundation, Severe, who owns a law firm that represents cancer victims, and we are going to talk actually today about Severe's journey with Grunt Style Foundation and some of the benefit he's seen and witnessed and experienced in the healing, holistic healing, and plant medicine space. And I'm also lucky to be joined by Tony Messenger from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, a renowned award-winning author who covers a lot of wonderful topics and blows open a lot of stories, helping veterans. And he has specifically helped me in the past, so I'm sure we'll get into that. But right before we get into speaking with our guests, I would love to call out some upcoming Irreverent Warriors events that we have and remind everybody to, if you want to get together with some buddies and road trip to one of these, and that seems to be a very popular option. But we'd love to see you at our events. Isolation kills. And if we eliminate isolation, we eliminate veteran suicide. You know, when we got out and we lost our platoon and that camaraderie and that emotional safety net that we had on active duty, we didn't realize at the time, that our freedom came with a price, and that was disconnecting essentially from the platoon. And it wasn't until some of us years later realized that I don't have this emotional safety net. For me, I had a tough upbringing with my family and didn't really feel like I fit in very well there. And so when I joined the military at the age of 18, I was kind of rebuilding who I was, rebuilding my sense of family. And I found that in the Marine Corps. And I found that throughout my deployments. And of course, I had people I had friction with and didn't get along with, but I always had people that were almost closer to me than my siblings, closer to me than my family. And when it finally came time for me to feel burnt out on deployments and all the different things, and I got off of active duty for the last time, and I felt, oh man, I'm free. I'm a civilian. I can now go pursue whatever I want in my life without the threat of being called up and deployed or randomly sent somewhere at the drop of a hat. Over time, I started to really miss the camaraderie, and I think it's that we're rebuilding at these events. And I think that's why they're so important. And so I want to call out that April 11th, if you're anywhere near the state of Indiana, the huge Indiana hike in Vincennes is occurring. That's going to be a big one. Stacy and Thad and their team put on an amazing event. We've got Emerald Coast. If you're anywhere near Panama City, Florida, Destin, Florida, Pensacola, and you want to come and go to a fantastic hike, it's going to include hiking on the beach, through the city, police escort, all of that stuff. It's a fantastic event. Nate and Anna are the leaders down there, and they're hosting just a phenomenal event. And then if you're anywhere near Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, that is one of our biggest hikes every single year there in North Carolina. If you can make it to Camp Lejeune, highly recommend you do. Crystal and her team are always kicking ass and taking names at the Camp Lejeune hike. So again, April 11th, try to make it to one of those three. And then the following weekend, April 18th, we've got San Francisco. If you're anywhere near the West Coast, my sister lives out there. I might try to make it out there. She's in the Bay Area. I actually grew up in the 80s in San Francisco, so it'd be a nice little homecoming trip for me. And then we've also got on April 18th, we've got the Indiana Silkies Retreat. So check that out. Get online. Go to the irreverentwarriors.org or irreverentwarriors.com. They both end you up in the same spot. Check out the events, and we'd love to see you there. So that being said, with our little pre-commercial, I'd love to jump into talking to Tony. So Tony, fantastic author. Thank you for all the articles you've written. I know you've written a bunch of stuff lately advocating for veterans, including hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I've experienced at some of our retreats, the PACT Act, and how that's assisted veterans, the Richard Starr Act. And then you're here now listening and weighing in on what Grunt Style Foundation and Irreverent Warriors are doing. So thank you so much. Why do you feel called to be an advocate for veterans?
In my case, as you know, I didn't serve. I've got some relatives who have served. My son is a major in the Marines. He's in the reserves right now. Left active duty a couple of years ago and is trying to kind of follow your path. Figure out the corporate world or for a period of time before he ends up probably in the same place you are right now. It's like eventually get out of that and find some happiness helping people. But
you have to leave the military, and then you have to, for some reason, strike out on your own and prove yourself, and that you can be successful. And then some of us end up, all right, I'm going to end up in the nonprofit space. Yeah.
I think what attracts me to the veteran story is we do a great job in this country talking about supporting veterans and particularly, promising them health care and promising them benefits and retirement and all of these things to lure them into, signing on the dotted line and giving Uncle Sam so many years of their lives and all of that. But every time one of these veterans groups or a specific veteran brings me a story about promises made and not kept, it's just I feel compelled to use my voice to help veterans tell their story about the fact that, oh my gosh, I was medically retired and the government made me choose between the two different sorts of healthcare and retirement that I was yes. supposed to qualify for and I'm not getting, i.e. Right. the Richard Starr Act, or good buddy of mine is a former Marine. I don't think you actually say former Marine. I guess you're once a Marine, always a Marine. Yeah. But Amir Hadzik is a buddy of mine, and he drove to D.C. to help advocate for the PACT Act. And so, I have these good friends who are veterans who are constantly telling me stories about the reality of suicide in the veterans community and the reality of the fact that the government makes a lot of promises that it doesn't always keep. And that just, to me, draws me into that space. And every time I write about, one element of that story, I end up hearing from other veterans who tell me another part of that same story, and it continues. And it's unfortunate because, again, our politicians and so many of us just in the space, in the community of like, oh yeah, I believe in this idea of us keeping our promises to veterans. And I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there who really understand that a lot of those promises aren't kept. And we don't really go the extra mile, particularly when it comes to veterans and homelessness and veterans and healthcare and dealing with mental health in particular, for a variety of reasons, in part because as a country we just don't really deal with mental health issues very well at all. That's something I've been writing about a lot lately, not just as it relates to the veteran space, but just in our criminal justice system and in our communities. We talk a good game about caring about mental health, but we don't fund it, and we don't really take it seriously.
Well, what do you think about this theory? We have a theory here that the veteran population is just out in front of the civilian population when it comes to mental health issues, and that post 9/11, a lot of us started having some pretty intense mental health diagnoses and being put on all these pharmaceuticals by the VA, and the civilian population didn't have a huge uptick in that type of treatment until COVID.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the veteran space is maybe a decade or more out in front of the civilian population. So over time, we could see the suicide rates start to rise dramatically on both sides, which we do not want. But it seems as if the veterans could be out in front of this problem.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And what you just spoke to, is my story, is COVID, is what the wheels came off. I don't know how else to say it. You know what I mean? And a lot of the things that I've heard my veteran friends talk about. I'm not a veteran either, right? Like Tony, but I hear the veteran friends talk about, and what you're talking about now, I've faced in my own ways, if you will.
Okay.
Right? And so what I think the non-military folks and the non-veterans have to understand is that what these veterans are dealing with are just the same things that we're dealing with as well. Like you said, they're just a little bit further ahead. They've had to deal with certain situations that some of us have not, obviously.
Sure.
Right. But we need to support these veterans, because ultimately what we're actually doing is supporting ourselves and supporting our kids and supporting the people that we care about.
Right.
It's all one group of people ultimately. But like your point is the veterans are they're in the front of the line, and they deserve to be in the front of the line, frankly. Right.
Thank you. You can say that. I don't know that I should, but yes, I definitely feel like when it comes to the country as a whole and the flag and the federal government, we for sure signed up to represent that. And if that meant death, that meant death. And if we had to die for each other, we had to die for each other. So yeah, there's definitely like a bigger commitment in signing on the dotted line with that.
Yeah. And the thing is we talk a lot about, we hear politicians, Tony mentioned politicians, we hear a lot about American exceptionalism and that kind of stuff. And the thing is that is real. That's a real thing, and I've been lucky enough to travel a lot in the world and whatnot. And you don't have to spend too much time in the rest of the world to realize they don't have it like we have it.
We're lucky.
We are incredibly lucky. And even our biggest issues and our biggest problems, and we can argue what those are light years ahead of what some of these other countries and people have to deal with.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, one of the main reasons for that, is the veterans and the service members. And I think what people maybe who have not been fortunate enough to travel a lot outside the country, it's something you have to see and experience to fully understand how truly gifted we have it here. That American exceptionalism thing is fucking real.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you bring up a bunch of really, really, really good points, because we actually at Irreverent Warriors and Grunt Style Foundation, we have veterans from Canada, the UK, France, and Germany that have joined us, even though they're not in the same benefit system or the same flag, or the same country as us, but they just don't feel like their countries have any kind of veteran nonprofit structure or benefit structure to support them. And so they come and they're learning from us and then advocating what we're advocating for. They're then taking things that have been passed in the United States, which I didn't know this, but they'll take the PACT Act, which you wrote about, Tony, and they'll take that to their legislature and they'll say, hey, why? How come we're not doing we served in Iraq and Afghanistan with these Americans? This should be something we're talking about, because there's just no conversation about it.
Which is another form of American exceptionalism, as far as I'm concerned.
It's just leading by example.
That's right. That's what it is.
Yeah. So we're continuing to drive forward. And you're talking about people from outside the country coming here. I think, Tony, you and I met during the Afghan evacuation, and you were covering that and writing about that and writing about the treatment of the troops and the Afghans and how that was poorly done, which we all agree. It's because of advocacy of yours and others, we ended up bringing over 100 Afghans to St. Louis that served and worked and supported the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Army in southern Afghanistan, specifically in Kandahar province and Helmand River Valley. What was your experience with that?
That was a fascinating look at how, we talk earlier, we were talking about the commitments that the government makes, that the people make to veterans. Well, that was a similar story. We made commitments as a country to those interpreters who put their lives on the line to help their American military partners.
Yeah.
And we promised them certain things, and then we broke that promise. And we're still breaking those promises. There are still Afghan interpreters and their families and other folks from Afghanistan who helped the military effort during that long war, who haven't made it back to the U.S.
Yes, and all those flights, everything has been shut down.
It's been shut down. There are others who did make it to the U.S., and communities like St. Louis started to make all of these commitments to help the Afghans build a community here. And then the federal government said, well, you know what, we're gonna cut back on that program, and we're not gonna fund those Afghans who are on parole, and we're not gonna fund the nonprofits, the Immigration Institute, and the folks who are trying to help them. And so we're still breaking those promises. And the Afghans that came here, that I know, that I've talked to, that you knew, in country back in Afghanistan, they're building a life here, and and they're living the American dream. But we're still cutting off that American dream to those folks. And it was amazing when I was reporting on that. Talking to you, talking to Jason Kander, talking to Pete Lucier, and the veterans who had such an unbelievable commitment to staying up all night on the phones, on social media, on Signal, everything else, trying to communicate with folks in country in Afghanistan and save these lives and save their families. And that was just such a... It's a commitment that was inspiring to me, because it's not anything I've lived.
Sure.
And so I just wanted to do, what I could to add my voice to amplify the voices of the folks who were doing that work.
You just reminded me of all the sleepless nights during that evacuation where, I was on Signal and Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. Yeah. And making sure that our folks were trying to get through that Abbey Gate and try to get evacuated. We ended up getting about a dozen, I think, out at that time. And then we still have 33 in Afghanistan who have U.S. visas approved, but just can't get out of Afghanistan. So it's I think about those guys all the time. But the ones that have come here, they are the most patriotic. To Severe's point about traveling abroad and then coming to the United States and then actually appreciating what we have here, those are the most patriotic. Most of them aren't citizens yet, but they're earning their citizenship. Hasib, my translator, has earned his citizenship, and he is the most patriotic American that you'll ever meet, because he respects the way the lines on the road are done. I'm not even kidding you. He will tell you, you see these lines on the road? These are perfect. These are incredible. These keep people safe. These keep kids safe, and he'll just find all these reasons why America's the greatest country on earth.
He probably understands the things that we take for granted, like why is that line dotted and that one straight? And what about those places where it's like it's a straight line and then it's dotted for a while? What does that mean? I bet you Hasib knows exactly what those things mean.
Yes. And when he was going through getting his driver's license and all the different processes of, learning how to operate in America, he took everything super seriously. And then he's educating me on, oh no, that person gets to go first at the stop sign.
Well, the interesting thing is what, excuse me, and I'm an attorney, right? So I never became an attorney because I was passionate about the law or anything like that. I just kind of stumbled into it, to be completely honest. But
you're the opposite of me, because I took the LSAT and I decided that was not the.
You're the smart one then. Then you're the smart one.
That was not the move for me.
You're clearly the smart one. But the thing about this topic is that in this country, and it may not always feel like this, but there is a rule of law. And that rule of law matters, and it's enforced, and it may not be enforced the right way all the time. Tony writes a lot about criminal justice reform and whatnot, but there is still basic rule of law. And I think that's what he's talking about, is when you go to some of these other countries, there is not rule of law.
The rule of law was corruption.
It's right.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, that's what I experienced.
A lot of Asia is like that. There's a lot of just different places throughout the country or throughout the world. We don't need to get into everyone, right? But
it's like humans, in their evolution, there's always a stage where it's like whoever has power, they get the benefit.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And everybody else, they better survive.
That's right.
Oh man. Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey, Severe, with Grunt Style Foundation. I know that you said that during COVID, you started having some mental health struggles. I definitely did myself, and we both ended up in the plant medicine space, which is it's odd how it can kind of pull you in, grab you in. You read something, you see something. Do you remember what you started? Did a podcast pop up for you or something where you're like, that might be the route that I need to take for my mental health?
Yeah, it just kind of, like most things, it seems like in my life, it just kind of I stumbled into it, if you will. COVID, I was traveling a lot before COVID hit. And so I had my spaces to let my emotions and my demons come out, if you will. And my family didn't know about it. My friends didn't know, but I was able to hide it. But when COVID hit, I wasn't traveling and I didn't have a place for those things to go. And that's really what exposed everything. And so I started the talk therapy. I'm still in that. I love my therapist. She's awesome, Carly. But I hit certain limits, if you will. I couldn't go deep enough.
Like let's talk about this for a second, because I think this is so critical to, it's like I had different personalities going in my head. To this day, I still kind of do. I have all these different conversations going in my head, and some of those are extremely negative, right? Yeah. And I would get in these loops, and there's some point where you're doing, talk therapy or even journaling or whatever. There's different things that you do to try to improve your mental health, but then there's a subconscious block, almost like there's a locked door, or there's something where it's like, this was locked away in a dungeon, and I don't even know how to get back to the hallway that leads to that room, right? That's right. But there's something from childhood that was exacerbated by my military service. This is me talking, because there were a lot of what I would call, there were times in Iraq where I saw some really horrific stuff. I watched some folks burn to death. I watched, a little kid that had been shot, and some really horrible things. But when I think about the emotions of those moments and then the thoughts and the patterns afterward that were difficult for me, when I really root back to why that was so difficult, it was vulnerability and childhood related things that had occurred to me that then I was then kind of seeing those fears as a child and feeling them again way stronger. Yeah. So it was almost like military service for me exacerbated things that had been there, and I joined the military to get away from them, And so, so the subconscious, there's like a locked hallway, or there's different places you want to go to in childhood, and you want to start healing this in talk therapy, but you just can't
penetrate it.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I went through talk therapy, and we made a lot of progress, and then I plateaued. It's like, you go into the gym, it's like anything else, you plateau, and you got to try something different. And,
okay, got it. Yeah.
And I met, I was just kind of being a little bit more open about my own journey, if you will, my own mental health struggles. And a friend of mine just kind of suggested some plant medicine. And it was something that then took me to Wikipedia, so on and so forth.
Rabbit hole.
That's right. And
you're a research guy. You're an attorney. So
that's right.
Like, I'm going to go deep in the, what's all the available data.
That's right. That's right. I mean, might as well just write my own Wikipedia page at this point, right?
Yeah.
But I did that, and I started talking with some folks, and I was able to go down south and sit with some plant medicine, and that's really where I got introduced to Grunt style, and not through anything formal. It was just when I was at my deepest or darkest, if you will, fighting those demons. I had someone from Grunt style, Will Wisner, Will motherfucking Wisner is who that is. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's a fucking OG right there. But I had Will really be my best friend I've ever had in my life in those moments. And so I just feel a sense of responsibility, if you will, not only just to Will, but just to what Grunt style does, what Irreverent Warriors does, and then and then just being a child of immigrants and seeing what the rest of the world is compared to what this country is. Yeah. What I do know is that with my struggles and my challenges and the things that I've been able to be successful at and things I haven't been successful at, had I grown up in the country where my parents are from,
which is
India.
Okay.
I would just not be in a good place. I would have continued the violence against my kids that happened to me, because the rule of law and all the things that this United States of America has given to me, there is, and I tie that directly There's multiple reasons for this, but one of the main reasons is for the fucking work that you all do fighting for what we have. And there's just, I think for us who don't fight that way and haven't fought that way, there's different ways that we can fight. And that means supporting the people who have. And that means they get to go in the front of the fucking line. Right. And so I want to do what I can to support friends of mine, obviously, who are veterans and dealing with this. Tony's got family, you all. Yeah, I just want to do my fucking part. Honestly, it's not any more complicated than that, if you will.
That's badass, man. Well, I mean, it seems as if you feel like, yeah, this is just, of course, right? But I would say that 99.9% of folks don't have that calling. They don't have that feeling. It's just too overwhelming.
Well, we're going to change that. We can change that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
no,
we're going to change that.
We need your help. I mean, veterans need all the support or help that they possibly can, right? Because a lot of times it's hard to advocate for yourself, especially as a man growing up in our society. It's like asking for help and constantly advocating for yourself, not simple.
Yeah. Well, and Hugh, you were talking earlier about how veterans sometimes are at the forefront of issues that are issues throughout society, mental health. I think about, we're here in Missouri that has legalized pot. It started with just medicinal. And who were the people who made that happen? It was veterans. I remember being in this county, specifically in Jefferson County, talking to a veteran who was a senior citizen who was, getting his pot on the black market before things started being legalized in Missouri.
Probably for pain management or sleep or something.
Yeah. And anxiety as well. Yeah. And it was such common sense for all of the veterans that I talked to about how that drug that had been around for so long, that frankly shouldn't even be considered a drug necessarily, but
a plant,
as a plant. As a society, we did, and we treated it that way. And I really think it was veterans as much as anybody else who led that charge, who went in to talk to lawmakers. And because they're veterans, they were able to get through the door. And then they got through the door and they just explained their story and how, look, I've got issues and this helps me. The other stuff wasn't helping. This is helping. And I can't necessarily explain why, but it is. So are you going to help other veterans like me access this? And it was a big part of that story.
And if I could just real quickly, the flip side of this also is because of the line of work we're in, we see a lot of internal corporate documents with pharmaceutical companies and chemical companies. It's just the line of work we're in.
Oh, yeah.
If you will.
Yep.
And the average person does not understand the level of corporate fucking malfeasance when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
We just don't.
If they don't get called out on it, they're not going to change it.
They are not going to change on it. There's a reason why this industry was so against legalized pot.
Yes.
It's not because they don't like it.
No, it's a threat. It's a threat to revenue.
It's a threat. It's about profits.
Yeah.
It's profits over people. I mean, this is one of the mottos that we have at our law firm, but this is no different. I mean, these veterans issues, at the end of the day, to Tony's point, they talk about these things up until the point where it doesn't jeopardize profit.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, and it's just a simple calculation for them, right?
Yeah, before I did this, when I met Tony in my past life, I was a business strategist, and I worked on different strategy teams for Fortune 500 companies. And what we would do is we would find out whatever the loopholes were, and we would exploit that gray area. That's considered blue ocean. So you have red ocean, which is a market that's saturated by sharks who are all picking apart, like if you think about toilet paper, right? Commodity, any paper company can make toilet paper. There's just not a lot of margin in it, right? There's just not a lot of revenue. So what we tried to do is go find blue oceans, which is no sharks are in there yet. And so what we would do is we would find a gray area in different industries that hadn't been regulated yet. And we would go in there and then we would try to make the highest amount of profit possible. And then our quarterly bonuses were all based on reflecting that, right? And we would also then use regulation to our advantage once we found a blue ocean and we went into it and started making a ton of profit off of something, a new pharmaceutical class or whatever it is. We then build a moat around the castle and we lock all the doors.
To protect yourself.
And you make sure that you have a legal monopoly that's protected and governed by law, right? And so very familiar with what you're describing.
Yeah.
Very, very, very familiar. There's so much to uncover here, and it's just good for us to be able to even talk about it publicly without feeling like we're going to be judged or shamed or get in some sort of trouble.
It's also the only way it's going to change is by people like Tony speaking up to these things.
Yeah.
It's like people like you guys sharing your own stories. It's about groups of people coming together and basically telling the higher ups, go fuck yourself, man. That's over.
Yeah, and I mean the data on the plant medicine stuff has just been really undeniable. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of there's a new film on Netflix called In Waves and War. Oh, you've seen it? Okay, great.
So powerful.
It's the Stanford University does a study where there's a bunch of veterans who are struggling with suicidal ideation, marriages are falling apart, alcoholism. Almost all of it roots back to childhood stuff that they can't access anymore. As you and I were discussing, there's like a subconscious door that's locked, right? And they go down to Mexico in this case, and they do plant medicines, and then they come back, and they're able to...
First, I was just wondering, when is this going to start?
The medicine brings out things it wants you to see, and you don't know why.
I had a lot of stuff to work through.
And that's one of the Navy SEALs.
Navy SEAL training is one of the most demanding things on the planet.
It was like being drafted and going to the Patriots.
Multiple
It was everything I ever wanted.
The worse the place was, the more we wanted to go.
It felt like Russian roulette. Every time he would leave, he may not.
These guys saw all this combat trauma, but in their plant medicine journeys, what ended up happening is talking and facing childhood. Every single one of them. What'd you think about that?
It blew my mind, man, because as someone who, again, has not served, I'm watching this documentary expecting them to be talking about
war,
the things that I can only imagine, the things that you just shared a little bit ago, the things that you've seen and whatnot. And that's what I was expecting. And I was watching it because I've got my own things that I've been working on. I'm interested in this stuff. I've sat with some medicines and whatnot. And when they started talking about it was childhood where they went in the medicine, it blew my mind. It in many ways, selfishly gave me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Because if these, and I hate to say it this way, man, but if all these veterans and these badass fucking dudes, man, are struggling with some stuff, and it's maybe similar to some of the things that I've had,
like your dad
I got a
screaming
chance.
at you and shaming you and all that stuff.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And like in just doing some really horrible things, you know what I mean? And like, and, you know, and the other thing that it does is that I'll never forget the feeling of realizing that I'm not the only person in the world dealing with this.
Oh my gosh, the isolation, because you can get in your own head, and we see that lead to suicide over and over, is that folks will get in their own head like, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Nobody else is. I'm the major problem, and I don't want to be a burden on anyone else, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like you're in your own head where I'm being an actor in a world where I'm pretending to be like other folks, but then we realize everyone else is also pretending, and it just opens everything up. And that's at Irreverent Warriors and Grunt Style Foundation. That's a lot of what we do.
It's companionship.
And we talk about, you know, at our get-togethers, it's very normal for us to joke around about panic attacks, to joke around about our depression symptoms, to joke around about the pharmaceuticals that aren't working anymore. You know, we have a community where we discuss these things openly, and we talk about different paths to healing, and it's just a part of the conversation. And we're also talking about whatever concert we went to, and we're talking about, you know, the next... you know, some belly flop contest that we're having that summer. Like we're just having fun, but we're also just being vulnerable and just being honest. And we're a bunch of alpha types We're not like people that are, I'm a victim, woe is me, or anything like that. But we're also like, yeah, I mean, I had a horrible panic attack yesterday. It was probably worse than yours. And, you know, we could just joke around about it. But it's the dark humor that really got us through combat. And it's the dark humor that got us through the really tough training scenarios we were put through, which a lot of times was harder than combat, believe it or not. And so it's that kind of trauma bonding, you know, again. But yeah, isolation. And you were self-isolating is what you're describing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing that you're not the only person in the world changes the world. Right?
Well, I mean, and that's just the reality of mental health care in America, whether it's in the veteran space or the childhood trauma growing up in a violent community in an urban area in this country, or the homeless space. Yeah. We don't like to talk about mental health. You know, when we talk about mental health in this country, when there's a school shooting.
That's right.
When there's a school shooting, we don't want to talk about the guns, and we don't want to talk about any of the things that we might do to protect children from being slaughtered in their schools. So we talk about mental health. But you know what we don't do? We don't do anything about mental health.
Yeah.
We never take that next step to really do something, because it's a safe space to talk about mental health when it's distracting from something else. But the reality is, mental health is something that just exists in all of our different sectors in our communities, and that's where, again, veterans are leading, because they've gotten together in groups like yours in comfortable spaces and realized, boy, we have to talk about this, and we have to find a space where we can talk about it, because if we isolate, then when that suicidal ideation comes, you don't have the phone to pick up to call your buddy who's also a veteran, who understands and will drop everything to come over to your house right now and help you deal with that situation. Yeah. That's where this isolation thing happens, and we do that as a society.
Yeah.
By not talking about mental health and taking it seriously and spending money on it so that it's an issue that we can deal with. Why are we passing all these laws right now to get phones out of our schools?
That's right.
Some of that's social media stuff. Some of that's related to education. But you know what a lot of that's related to? It's related to mental health.
Yeah, the largest trial in California right now.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
There was the biggest verdict against Facebook and Meta and whatnot because of social media and what it's doing to mental health to young kids.
Yeah, the clinical data is damning. That it is basically rewiring the human brain from its natural evolutionary growth cycle in children, and it's hijacking it through when their neuroplasticity is highest, it's hijacking it for dopamine addiction and also for emotional reaction. And it's also numbing them in a weird way emotionally, because you can ghost people, you can cancel people, you can do these different things because you're not in an actual face-to-face relationship, which humans, we're all have evolved to be in relation, in physical proximity to one another. And there's these weird things happening in the young adult and the teen and the child brain that are not reversible.
And those suicide rates, to your point, have been going up.
Yeah.
Right.
So the civilian population now you've got a perfect storm.
Coming.
You've got the post-COVID thing with a lot of the adults and parents, and then now you've got this onslaught of the social media AI world. I hadn't thought of that.
Well, and I think the COVID thing was also something that was really impactful on our youth in a way that we still don't understand. My two youngest children were teenagers during the COVID years. They're both in college now. And, I think generally they did okay, but I don't know how much that isolation impacted them in a way that's changed the way they look at the world, that changes the way they interact with the world. I think it did have an impact, and it had an impact for sure on lots of young people in a meaningful way, again, because of the isolation. Because of the, what did kids do when they were at home? They turned to the social media. They ended up, playing video games and talking to people on Discord.
They got pulled to the devices.
That's right.
My son and his buddies, I don't even remember what particular game they played, but they all played one particular game where they're online and they're talking to each other. So that was their, their social interaction. They're talking to each other
Good.
while they're playing this game.
Good.
And they happened to bring this kid into their world, who was this kid from Minnesota, who was a college kid in Iowa, and he was a little bit older than them. And during the year and a half, 2 years of COVID brain, this kid from Minnesota became like part of my son's friend group, that, all these West County kids. And so he comes to me one day as COVID's winding down, and he's like, "Hey, my friend's going to come hang out with us from Minnesota." And it turns out I wasn't the only parent who sort of freaked out. Like, wait a minute, you met this guy and he's a little older, and you met him online and all that. And so my wife and I decided to be the hard-ass parents. We're like, okay, your friend, quote marks, air quotes, from Minnesota has to come to our house
and meet us
so that I can meet him and make sure that, and my son's looking at me. I'm like, don't you look at me like that. There's a lot of weird shit that happens in this world, and I need to make sure this is a real human being, and you all aren't, getting in a van somewhere and I'm not going to hear from you again.
That's great.
And so right after I did that, I got a text from one of the other dads. We're in a fantasy football league together, and he texted me. He's like, "I told my wife, I knew you would be the hard ass that made. I'm so glad, because I was thinking I didn't want to be the one that had to do it." And so, this is a great kid. This is just a COVID kid who happened to play the same game that my friends did, and they all ended up becoming friends and buddies, and so that life, that 2-year life for I've got 6 kids. My 2 youngest kids lived that experience completely different than what their older and brothers and sisters ever had to deal with for that 2-year period. So what's the mental health impact that hasn't shown up yet? That 4 or 5 years down the road manifests itself in a different way, or
15 or 20 years down the road.
We're going to be dealing with this for a long time if we, in fact, as a country, decide to deal with it and say, "Oh wow, we created this mental health situation that now we have to deal with," and it impacted veterans in a particular way. It impacted people living in poverty in a specific way. It impacted people in corporate America and legal America who just all of a sudden had to face their own demons in a different way, and we're still dealing with it.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that what Severe said before, the veterans, we're going to lead the way. We're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to stop. I mean, what we're really talking about is emotions, emotional intelligence, feelings, understanding them, talking through them, where they come from, how they originate inside of us, how we can work through them without taking them out on other people and be responsible with our emotions. I mean, this is the conversation that it's going to keep spreading, because emotions aren't going anywhere, and people know that they're the root of so many problems in our society. So as long as we keep talking about it on this podcast, it'll keep being a thing. Yeah. I definitely appreciate both of you coming on. This was a fantastic episode. For those that are listening, I want to again remind you, April 11th, Emerald Coast, Silky's hike, the Big Indiana Vincennes hike, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And then April 18th, San Francisco, and look into the Indiana retreat if you're looking to participate in some of these modalities. We're going to be doing breath work, guided meditation, cold plunging, sweat lodging, journaling, all those things, all the different modalities, the alternatives to help work on your own mental health, because you are going to heal you, and we're going to help empower you so that you take charge of your own journey. I appreciate all the medical help I received over the years, all the diagnoses, all the different things that people tried to help me with. But at the end of the day, I had to take charge of my own healing journey. And that's what it's all about, empowerment, taking back your journey, because only you know what you need, and you're going to heal you. So thank you all for joining us on this wonderful Good Friday. Shout out to the GOAT, RIP, and everybody have a wonderful time with their families or whatever you end up doing this weekend, and a happy Easter for those that are celebrating it. So thanks, everybody. Peace out.